The pesticide industry is obviously incredibly wealthy, and they do spend a huge amount of money lobbying. They've spent over 35 million euros lobbying the European Union since 2020, when it introduced this raft of green measures for farming, which would have had big impacts for the pesticide sector.
Pesticides are chemical substances used in agriculture to control pests and diseases that threaten crop yields. However, residues of these pesticides persist on harvested produce, making their way into our dinner tables. And it's not consumers who are the only ones affected. Farmers, the backbone of our food systems, face health risks from constant exposure to these chemicals. As young fair trade advocates, we're conducting interviews with journalists, researchers, policymakers, and farmers. Our goal is to understand the full impact of pesticides on our ecosystem, our health, and the democratic processes that regulate agricultural practices. Our aim? To push for fairer and more sustainable food systems. But before we go deeper into the specific implications of pesticide use, it's crucial to understand the context in which these decisions are made. Let's take a closer look at the framework around these chemicals.
In a controversial move, the European Union opted last year to extend the use of glyphosate for another decade, despite member states' failure to reach a consensus on the active ingredient in Bayer's Roundup weed killer. As the Farm to Fork strategy promised a sustainable farming path in 2020, it faced fierce opposition from Europe's industrial agricultural sector, armed with a playbook designed to cast doubt, delay, and control the narrative around green farming reforms.
Bayer is an interesting example. They've spent a huge amount of money, so 17 million euros between 2020 and 2022, and they have 23 full-time lobbyists. So it means that they can have this kind of huge number of private meetings and things, but they also do a lot of lobbying through other groups. So they hire PR agencies, they work with the trade association CropLife Europe, which also represents other large pesticide firms. I think something really interesting that Bayer's been doing in the last few years is it leads the Glyphosate Renewal Group, which is basically an organisation that has kind of campaigned for the reapproval of a particularly controversial pesticide known as glyphosate. Glyphosate is considered a probable carcinogen by the WTO, but not in the EU. And Bayer has led this process to put glyphosate forward for reapproval again. But when it's applied for this, it's largely relied on kind of unpublished industry-funded studies, which seem to show a very different picture to the kind of peer-reviewed ones which don't have industry funding.
Recent demonstrations by farmers across Europe have prompted the European Commission to reconsider its approach to pesticide regulation. In response to the ongoing protests, the Commission has announced the withdrawal of its proposal to reduce pesticide use by 50% by 2030. While pesticides are often used for protecting crops and ensuring food security, concerns persist regarding their potential health risks. Studies have linked pesticides exposure to various health issues, including cancer and neurological disorders.
There are documented cases and growing concerns about the long-term health effects of pesticide exposure, both for human health and for the environment. So there are many documented cases every year of acute exposure. This occurs shortly or immediately after exposure, and it's related mostly to farmers who are applying pesticides. And symptoms may be headaches, nausea, dizziness, and in some cases death occurs. So this is extremely important for bystanders, for those neighbors of farmers who are applying pesticides. There are documented effects on the development. Children, especially those in early stages of development, are more vulnerable to the effects of pesticides. And they can affect the nervous system, brain, and other organs. Children and unborn children are in danger. So even low-level pesticide exposure are an important concern in pregnant women and young children. Low-level pesticide exposure during pregnancy or childhood have been found to be associated with neurodevelopmental deficits such as lower IQ, disorders, for example, autism, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and pervasive developmental disorder. So all these are the reasons to limit the application of pesticides and to limit their drift in the environment.
Pesticides, while once hailed as a solution to pest control, have now emerged as a double-edged sword, posing a significant threat to both human health and the delicate balance of our environment. Their use has led to the contamination of our soil, water, and air, with far-reaching consequences for human health and ecosystems alike. However, amid this growing concern, there emerges a beacon of hope, a multitude of alternatives to pesticides use, offering a path towards a safer, more sustainable future. These alternatives range from innovative technologies that harness the power of nature to systemic redesigns of agricultural practices, each with the potential to revolutionize the way we produce food.